The Grow My Cleaning Company podcast helps owners of cleaning companies just like you to grow your company and yourself so you can make more money and finally get the time and money freedom that probably got you into this business. Discover how to automate and create systems that allow you to grow like crazy without losing control. If you dig the show and want to show some love, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It really helps. Enjoy the show.
Hello, Clean Nation. Tracey Thompson here, and I am joined by the amazing, incredible John Torres. Say hi, John.
Hi, everybody.
John Torres, a little bit about him. Started Club Clean back in August 2018, so not that long ago in Michigan City. And Club Clean is obviously a janitorial cleaning service that you service in the Northwest Indiana Business District, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And John has had, we've invited him today because John has had an amazing turnaround story, if you will. Started the company in 2018, but I'd love to hear from you, John. When you first started, like, how did you get into this business? And then how did you come to us and why? And then we're going to jump to what happened this year, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. So my cleaning definitely wasn't on the radar. It wasn't in the plans. I had actually started a residential real estate investment company first.
Interesting.
In 2016. And that was going okay. I had a couple handful of renovations going on between 2017 and 2018, and some in Chicago, some in the Baltimore area, and fortunately, a couple of bad decisions on both investments and people that I was entrusting. That all kind of came crashing down. A lot of good lessons I learned during that time, but it just wasn't a successful venture for us. And during that time, we got introduced to what I would consider like a power couple, and they owned a couple handfuls of like a franchise, more in the ice cream dessert kind of space.
Yeah.
And we were just enthralled with them as people. We got connected with them through time in Maryland. We were living out there. And so we started to just develop a relationship with them and started working at their store with kind of the intention of partnering with them and opening up some franchises ourselves with them in the Chicago area. And so we actually moved at the very beginning of 2018. I still have about 4 real estate projects, or 5, that were going on in Baltimore at the time. I had bought a couple of family properties in Chicago area right around the time that we were transitioning to open up this franchise. And so the idea was to continue to do real estate and build a small but successful business there, while with my wife opening up this cream and fudge shop, and then seeing where that goes. And we're about 4 or 5 months into our move. We've sold our house in Maryland. We've moved to Northwest Indiana, just about an hour outside of Chicago, and the intention was actually to open up one of these franchises across from Wrigley Field. And so in the interim, we're negotiating with the landlord on the space. I had, a signed franchise agreement with the franchisor. Everything seemed moving the way we were wanting it to. And then it just didn't. And there's reasons why. We ended up backing out of that. We ended up pulling out of real estate over the course of the next couple of years because of some of those bad, people and property decisions we made, or I should say I made. And it kind of left me around May of 2018, like wondering, well, what am I doing here then in Northwest Indiana? If I'm not opening up this franchise and we're not going to continue buying real estate out here, what's next? Funny enough, my first ever renovation in Baltimore, a few years for that, the guy the GC I hired to do the project, he actually had a commercial cleaning company.
Hmm.
And it was his first business. This rehab business was actually his second. And during the time I lived in the Maryland area, I actually had contracted with him to a number of buildings in the DC area to provide commercial cleaning services. And so I wasn't performing the service, and I wasn't necessarily putting together anything related to operations, but I had a contact within the commercial property space, and I had him, and I was kind of the broker almost, although I served in a little bit of capacity for putting the schedule together, making sure it was done, and all that kind of stuff. And so fast forward, we're now in Chicago. The real estate thing I was doing starting to fall apart. The franchise is no longer happening, and I'm thinking about what are next steps for us. And I'm a man of faith. I happen to at that time really be seeking God, just asking, like, why are we here? What are we doing? I really felt like it's the right move. Help me figure this out.
Right.
And there's this story most people have probably heard, even if they're not church going folks, about the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and Jesus feeding the 5,000. And there's an interesting little nuance that you'll miss quickly in that story if you're not paying attention. And Jesus actually tells the disciples, go and pick up the fragments after everyone has eaten. And basically they were stepping all over them. They weren't even paying attention to these little fragments that they're probably sitting on and ignoring. And they end up with like 12 baskets full of just leftovers when all they had, which was more than what they had even started with to begin with. And this was just what was left over. And so I started to ask myself, and God even, like, what are the fragments in my life that I'm just stepping all over and I'm not even paying attention to? Because these 2 big carrots just like got on me. And now I feel like I'm left with nothing, but I was being encouraged to look for, what is there that I might not be noticing. And I had remembered that the arrangement I had with this former GC who I did some commercial cleaning deals with actually worked. I put a lot of time into that. He was doing the operations, and I just happened to have the contact and build that relationship. And it was passively producing for me somewhere around 15,000 a year at the time, and I was spending an hour a month on it. So it was, if that. So I'm thinking, I'm stepping all over that, not even paying attention to it, and it actually kind of worked. And so I start to do a little homework, and using some skills I picked up in sales over the years, I started cold calling. I started going on walkthroughs and putting together proposals. And while I'm doing that, I'm not totally confident or sure how I'm going to put together a proposal that, 1, is going to be profitable, and 2, isn't going to leave me, holding the bag because I did it. And so in that search is when I actually found a podcast from Mike, where he's talking about bidding on commercial, cleaning projects and stuff.
Perfect.
And as I started to apply what I was learning, or take what I could from free resources there to put my best foot forward in this new thing I was trying, I realized I was needing a little more. That I had information enough to know that I needed more information, I guess. You don't know what you don't know. This kind of revealed to me that there was a lot more I didn't know. And
then you were aware of what you didn't know.
Exactly. Which is also, a scary and humbling, but also healthy. So I spent a couple of months just banging my head against the wall, trying to get clients and figure out how to turn these fragments that I was leaving on the floor into something.
Yeah.
And so I ended up joining Elite that summer, July or August I think it was July of 2018. I went to the live event. Back then there wasn't, all these programs. It was there was just Elite, and then you have like one a year, one time a year you can go to a live event kind of thing. So I
Right.
went to that, and it was huge. I mean, it helped put together all of the stuff I had been learning in the modules.
Yes.
Um, in a real, in a way that was really motivating and helped me want to take that and do a lot with it, not just sit on it. And so I began to do that, and continue to work through the various stages of building a business that was going to be profitable, and at the same time not going to just be a full-time job for me. Because the idea, it's funny, you actually work more than full-time hours so that you can then work less than full-time hours.
Right.
And so you're putting a lot of work in, but it's, systems and processes and
When you're doing it the right way, that's what it's about. Yes, you're absolutely right.
yeah. And so that was the intention, and it was a ton of work in the beginning. But I remember the day we did our first recurring account, and I was just following kind of the steps of how to go on a job walk and what that proposal should look like, and bidding it the right way. And because I kind of started from my first large commercial reoccurring account with those principles in mind, it set us up to grow and to be successful.
And you came back to us last year, the end of last year, and joined our next level. And you've been with us since November, I think. Was it November? Yeah, November of last year. And one of the reasons and thank you so much for sharing that backstory. I didn't know much of that. It was very interesting how the evolution of how you came to even be a janitorial cleaning company owner. So fast forward, and we all know COVID, happened, and the hiring landscape changed, and a lot of things for everyone in this industry. So Clean Nation out there, you've all experienced some form, whether you're residential or commercial, change in the workforce, change in the way that you run business. And so John came back to us, joined our Next Level program, and had a very interesting experience in the beginning of the year. I think it was about March, where you were clicking along pretty well, and maybe you can share with everyone what happened, because that sets the stage for what happened next. And that's what's so exciting about what you've done, John. Maybe you can share with everyone what happened in March.
So I know we're talking about the same thing. What thing in March are you referring to?
Where you had a couple of key big clients that left.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's actually a little earlier than that. I had actually, when COVID happened, I had a friend a close friend had a manufacturing company, and they happened to produce hand sanitizer. And he reached out to me like within the first month of the COVID outbreak and all the craziness that ensued. And essentially said, "Hey, we need help. Would you mind coming on board and helping us right the ship operationally?" I've never done manufacturing a day in my life, but I know how to assemble a team to accomplish a mission, a goal, and get focused on that. And so after some conversations, I joined him in 2020, and for almost a year and a half, I was doing that full time and kind of put the cleaning business on pause, the growth of it at least.
Yeah.
And we had a decent, number of clients and staff. I mean, at the time we would hover around 15 cleaners. We had a couple of supervisors and a manager, and we were maintaining status quo during that time. If we would lose a count, we'd earn an account. And I was basically working part-time in my own business to do this. Right. And then in August of 2021 is when realized it was time to resign and go full time back into my own business. And it
Got
was
it.
kind of scary. I was making a good chunk of change doing that for my friend, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to remember and then apply a lot of what I'd learned and what had got us to where we were.
Got it.
And so that was kind of scary. I mean, I'm forfeiting a guaranteed decent
Mhm.
salary in
Mhm.
hopes that I'll be able to replace or more than replace that with my own efforts on my own business. And so I do that. I spent a couple of months just kind of getting reacquainted with my own operations and team and just, figuring out where we were. And then that's kind of what led me to reach back out to you all, because I knew I was missing a piece. I wanted the accountability. And so we struck up the conversation. I joined Next Level. It was a leap because I just got rid of a good salary and now I'm incurring costs to get some coaching at the same time.
Right.
But I really did feel like it was what I needed to do. And then within a couple weeks of doing that, in December, I have a meet my largest client, and their organizational structure changed. They were
Mm.
expanding rapidly, and they were
Mhm.
taking everything in-house.
Boy,
And so they basically gave us our artists, our 30-day notice.
got it.
Unfortunately, because I had been out of the business, I really didn't have a flow of prospects and leads
Mm.
coming in. I was
Mhm.
trying to develop that, knowing it was something I would need, but I wasn't there yet. And now I'm finding out that essentially 40% of my business is about to walk out the door.
Right.
Um, and so that happens in January. Mid-January, we stopped servicing them. I've been in Next Level for 6 weeks or something like that.
Right. It was a very short
And
time.
yeah, and it was very for sure. I just did my best to stay focused on the things I would need to do to
Yes.
help us get to the place I wanted to get, and not so much on the where we happen to be.
And
Um,
and that's exactly what I wanted to talk about and really hone in on, because I know there's a lot of people out there. There are a lot of owners out there right now, John, in Clean Nation, where you all have experienced some version, right, of either having a lot of your team suddenly leave, which can be just as hard, right? Yeah, that could be just as devastating as to have. And Mike always says, but it's not just one person when they leave. It's usually 3, 4, 5 people at a time that leave, or you lose a big chunk of business. Either way, when you have sort of a crisis in the business happen, it's not whether or not that happens that is the measure of how good a company you are. It's how you recover, and it's the systems that you have in place and that you put in place during times like that that make all the difference. And I happen to know recently, like, since I remember the billing kind of flow from February, March, where you had the big dip, and then how quickly you implemented systems in order to build back up your clientele, but you also simultaneously were building this amazing hiring funnel, which has to happen simultaneously, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's everybody at some point at some level, and I'm sure it varies, but they deal with this mental hurdle of, if I get more clients, I don't have the people to service those clients. But if I have more people than I need, then I don't have enough hours for the people. And so then you
Yes.
end up just not taking any action.
Right.
And you get stuck in this like hamster wheel within your business's growth on either side of that coin.
Right.
But really, I realized, similar to joining Next Level, to give me accountability. I knew I needed accountability. That for me, that's what I needed.
Right.
It was the right choice, and
Yes.
so I did that. Similar along that same vein, I realized I'm I'm never gonna make the moves I need to make within the systems in my business to have more people than I need and more clients than I need until I just start taking some action and I'm forcing myself to. And so I just started simultaneously building out a reliable, measurable, just repeatable system for finding and funneling applicants, so that even if we didn't have as many cleaners as we need right now, I knew it was only a matter of a week or two.
Right.
Because I had the system in place, and you just turn the dial up. You take a few extra bits of action to really get the juices flowing within the system, and churns out what you need, while also trying to do that with the sales. So
Right.
let's just do both at the same time. And it was before I needed it. I mean, we were running around 12 or so cleaners, January, February timeframe. And I started to really leverage some of the software you guys have recommended in the program to bring together all the one-offs that I was using. I was using Calendly, Aweber, and like all this stuff.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, here's something that will do it all. Let me get that in here. And now I can design a pipeline that will allow me to know exactly where an applicant is in the process, and exactly what we need to do then to make sure they continue to move along until they become an employee. And then simultaneously, we were doing that for our customers. So we developed a customer pipeline that served kind of the same purpose.
And I really quick, John, just to give people context. So back in February, let's say you had about 12-ish cleaners, correct? And you were, from what I recall at that time, billing around $30,000 a month. Let's fast forward to today. So everyone has context. How many cleaners do you have now?
Sure. It does fluctuate, but we have about 40 cleaners right now.
Wow. So from 12 to 40 cleaners in 6 months ish. Yeah.
It was less than that. So we stayed around that 12 mark from February, March up until the start of May.
So I really
and then in May is when we got our first really large account.
Right.
And that really propelled us into action. Like, we have to fill these holes. And so it jump started the redevelopment of the prototype, so to speak, that I had in place for
the hiring system,
funneling people through, applicants through. And then we got another really big account that we started July 1st. So we had about 6 weeks of needing to get to about 20 to 25 people, which by the end of that 6 weeks we did. And then we realized we need like another 15 or so people, which was more than I had even started with at the beginning of May. I just needed to add that to the team.
Yes.
And this system, along with some sponsorship dollars to the various job posting sites, helped make it happen. And there's lots of nuances to it. Some key people we hired to help us administrate some of that. I was very, very active during that time within our hiring system, and I was hopping on interviews and phone calls and pushing buttons and just figuring it all out. To dial it in. But we're at the place now where I guess the only way to put it is I want to dial in the leads and the customer pipeline to the point where we've dialed in the applicant pipeline. But essentially the thing I wanted to mention during the January kind of to March timeframe, it was a scary time because we had lost so much of our business, for us, percentage wise. And there is definitely a temptation during that time. I had forfeited my salary. I had just invested into this coaching program, and now I'm about to lose my largest client. There's definitely temptation to just go to fear. There's temptation to just go to unhealthy places, when you see things happening. but I made a choice, and I want to say it was January.
Yeah.
That I think served me really, really well. And it essentially was, despite all the options on how I could look at my situation, I chose to say leaving is making room for the next better thing.
Mm.
And so it helped me focus on what action I needed to take today to just get a little bit closer to that, versus lamenting on what I was about to or had just lost, which wasn't going to serve me. I need to do something about it now anyway.
Right.
So how can I look at this? And you talk about framing things differently and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And that was how I was framing that situation. So how I felt about what was going on was fueling versus draining. So
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that, that mindset frame, because so many people, when they get caught in these situations, something that's unexpected, like what happened with you, get into fear, as you said, and then they think or overthink about the wrong things and stop taking action. So it's so, so powerful. And thank you for sharing that specific mindset frame, because that's really important. And Clean Nation, if you're out there, and just put a bow on where John is now, as of August, I believe you brought your billing up to around 115,000 a month, and have a staff of 40 cleaners, and have a system for pretty much everything in the business. And you're now starting to develop and continue to elevate your client attraction funnel, but you're all doing that with support, accountability, and even at your level. This is what I want everyone to really take away from this. It doesn't matter whether you're just starting and you're small, right, and you're building, or you've been in the business for a while and you're like, well, you know what? It's time for me to grow to the next level. Everyone, all of us need support. And I would say the one big takeaway I got from what you just said, shared with us, John, is mindset matters a lot. Getting into the right mind frame, and then getting support and taking action. What would you say, John, is the one thing that you want to tell Clean Nation out there as a piece of advice, or something that you think maybe people get wrong? You shared a little bit about that, but what's the one big takeaway that you would love to share with Clean Nation before we wrap?
Sure. That you cannot, I don't think it's possible to overestimate the power of clarity. When you're really, really clear on where you want to go, then it becomes really, really clear on what next step I need to take. And, part of what helped me during that process, when we have this goal sheet that we're paying attention to, I mean, it provided immense clarity, because it made me think about where do we want to be, and then it showed me where I was versus where I wanted to be. And so I knew that it was time to really focus my energy and attention, in my case, over the summer, on building a team that could help us, really serve our clients well and set us up for success and growth. But the reason I knew that's where I needed to spend the majority of my time was because I was tracking it, and
Yes.
I saw it in front of me. And so there's, whatever the tool happens to be, just use whatever is going to help you get clear on where you want to be and where you are in relation to that, because the power of that is immense.
And I love that. Clarity is king. So, and to that end, if you're out there, Clean Nation, and you're listening, you're going, oh my gosh, I want to be like John. I want to move my business in that way. I want to create these systems. John said it perfectly. Start with clarity. Well, you know what? Honestly, some people need some help. So if you need support in getting clear, having that clarity, go to growmycleaningcompany.com/talk and talk to one of our coaches. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll even get an opportunity to talk to Mike directly and have him or one of our coaches help you get that clarity, so you know where you are and you know what you want and you know where you're going. So thank you so much, John, for joining us today. And Clean Nation, we will see you on the other side. Bye.
Well, here we are, the end of the podcast, and you made it. Great job. I've got a little bonus for you for sticking through with me, but like I mentioned before, if you got value out of this podcast and you want to show a little love, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever the heck you're listening to this thing. Share with a friend, share the love. And as a special thank you for those of you that stuck with me to the end, how about I give you my personal phone number so we can text? It's a great way for me to get to know you, your business, your goals personally. So shoot me a text now, 602-932-6431. That's 602-932-6431. I am the only one who responds to these texts, and I will personally respond to everyone I possibly can as long as this number is manned. Don't know how long we're going to keep this at the end of the podcast, so grab it now. 602-932-6431. Give me a text, say hey, can't wait to meet you.